cover just the basics of what you will need to seed indoors. So the most basic thing you can get is just a liner tray. So this doesn't have any holes on the bottom. It's thick plastic. You can reuse it a few times. And there are 3 different things that you can add inside this tray. So probably your cheapest option are these, I forgot what they're called.
Egg cartons. I thought an egg carton's the cheapest option.
Okay, so your cheapest option and also the most versatile in size and shape and all those different things are just these thin plastic liners. So these are made to fit perfectly inside the tray. Kind of the benefit with these is that you can get them in different sizes. So different plants require different sizes. So I will get into that a little bit more too. Another option are these peat trays, and these they're a little more pricey, but you can break them apart and actually plant this in the ground. So there's less plastic waste with that if you prefer. Another option are peat pellets. So they'll come in a form like this, and then you just soak them for a little while and they expand into this size, and that's like the perfect little container for your seed. And again, you can just plant this directly in the soil. And these come in a range of sizes too, as do the peat trays. So you can kind of get different sizes depending on what you're growing. Another option that's a little bit more pricey, but you can reuse it again, are called plug trays. So these come in a range of different sizes. It's really thick plastic. A lot of times I'll just spray these out, bleach them, and reuse them again. So they're pretty high quality. And you can get them in different depths and also diameters. So just an example of different seeds that require different sizes. Sweet peas, where'd they go? Yeah, so our sweet pea seed, these have really deep roots and they grow really fast. So when we're starting them indoors, within about 8 weeks, the roots will probably fill this container. But something like the herbs or even our larkspur, we might want to start those in smaller containers like this size. They're a little slower growing. The root mass isn't quite as deep as sweet pea too, so you really want to choose the right container for your seed. And we could start anything in here, but I'm guessing that our herbs will probably only grow down to about here generally, and just different things like that. So as we go throughout this class, I'll tell you what kinds of trays are best, or kind of the range of tray size you could get. And then we'll also talk about different medias. So those little peat plugs, these have enough nutrients and they really retain moisture, so it's perfect for seeding. A few other options are something like coconut coir, which is a more sustainable option than peat. A lot of people prefer to use that. And then there's also just seeding mixes. So this has just the right amount of nutrients per seed. It typically has peat or coconut coir. Those both help to just really retain moisture. And the perlite, like the little white kind of crunchy things you'll find in there, that helps to just kind of add aeration to the soil, because although we want to retain moisture, we still want that aeration. So the main things that you'll want to look for in your soilless seeding media are water retention, the right amount of drainage and nutrients, and finally you want it to be sterile. So a lot of times seeds, when we're seeding them, they can develop different disease issues. And a few ways to get around that are to have that good draining soil. So you might have to water more frequently, but it's better for the seed in the long run. And this light mix is also really easy for the roots to kind of spread out into. So we don't want to put thick soil from our yard in these containers. It won't drain well, it will hold a lot more moisture and just won't do well. So you do want to invest in some kind of seed starting mix, and they have just basic general ones that you could get at a gardening store or hardware store, different places like that, order it online. So there's a lot of different sources. I don't have any brand recommendations or anything. Tons of things will work. So whatever you find that's near you, that will be great. The one thing I do have to add though is some seed mixes are finer. So with things like larkspur seed that is really just very fine, it can sometimes be hard for them to grow through coarser soil that might have chunks of bark or different large organic materials in it. So there are thinner, finer materials on the market that will be better for those. Something like sweet pea, really large roots, large seed, it can grow through that thicker media. So those are just a few things to take into consideration. If you have any more questions on that, was really basic, kind of general, but please message me and I would be happy to go into details on different medias, containers, or different things like that. But as we go throughout the class, I'll cover it in more detail for specific plants. Another thing that you'll want to consider using is a plastic dome. So these are fairly inexpensive. They usually fit just about any tray. So yeah, this fits every tray I have. But this really helps to keep the humidity levels higher, which can be beneficial for germination. I usually prefer 60 to 80% humidity, so that really keeps it higher, especially in places like Utah where our air is so dry that I'm growing from. So that's really helpful. It can also reduce how often you have to water because you don't have as much evaporation from the soil. So that's something to consider. A few other things that you could do are heat mats, and those are good for typically your warmer season crops, your warm season seeds. Something like tomatoes or peppers that really need that heat. Heat mats are very beneficial for those. All the things that we're growing right now, you don't really need that. It's an extra expense. I wouldn't worry about it. But the one thing that you do need absolutely is light. So you either need to have a really sunny window that's south facing or east west, just to get enough light during the day, or you can invest in a grow light. So there's a lot of different grow lights on the market. You will want to get one that's catered towards seeding or young plants, and there's different specifications I can get to with that, but they have fluorescent, LED, different options like that depending on budget or whatever you would like to purchase. But as long as you have a sunny window, that should be good enough. One other thing that you could invest in if you wanted to, this is one of those extra costs, but they do have capillary mats on the market as well. So what that is almost it's like a felt material, kind of similar to landscape fabric, and you would just add water to the bottom of your tray and then put the felt fabric on, and then through these holes the plants and the soilless media will actually draw the moisture up. So that is really good if you don't want to do overhead watering and disturbing the seed. The fabric's usually pretty inexpensive, but that is another option if you want to get even fancier. So those are kind of my general guidelines, just in different equipment you'll want to invest in with seeding. I do want to talk about filling your trays really quick as well. So this is a plug size I'll use for my sweet peas. It's a little bit larger than what I wanted, but something in this range is good. So you'll just want to add your soilless media pretty loosely. You don't want to be packing it down with your hands because you want to create this nice balance of water and air. So your roots will basically suffocate if you're adding too much water and they're really saturated. And you never want your plugs to be sitting in water for very long because that can also create some disease problems and they just aren't getting enough oxygen to the roots. So this light, fluffy, soilless media is good for just getting us that good balance. So rather than pushing it down with my hands, I'm just gonna tap it. Just a few times. And you can see these plastic things weren't even visible before, but it's like gently tap down in so there aren't any large air pockets, but it's also not too cramped in there. And then just from there you can make little holes or add a little soil back in, whatever you need to do. Sometimes you'll need to add a little more soil to fill in those holes, but that's kind of the basic guideline. Never push it down with your fingers, just give it a good few taps and that will be perfect. So now we will get into the specifics of the seeds that we sent you this January. Thank you.